In the heart of the continent, where the winds whisper secrets through tall grasses and elders gather beneath ancient baobab trees, there lives a tale so haunting, it is only shared in hushed voices around late-night fires. It is a story soaked in mystery, bound tightly with threads of fear, love, and the invisible strings that tie the living to the spirit realm. Passed down through generations, this African folktale isn't just a tale to entertain the curious. It is a warning, a reminder that what we see is not always what truly is. They say that long ago, in a village far from the noisy world of markets and drums, there lived a woman whose fate was sealed by a choice made in innocence. A choice born from curiosity, maybe even loneliness. A choice that many young hearts could understand. She followed love, or what she believed to be love, down a path no one else dared to tread. Her name was Nia, and she thought she was marrying a man. A farmer. A quiet soul who seemed too kind for this harsh world. But what she didn't know was that kindness can be a mask. And masks in the lands of the ancestors are never worn without reason. The story begins not with a celebration but with a whisper. Villagers remember how it all felt slightly off. The air heavier, the moon brighter than usual, the animals acting strange on the night of her wedding. They recall how the drums sounded hollow and how an old woman, bent by time, muttered a warning that no one paid attention to. They remember Nia's eyes, glowing with hope, and the stranger's smile, always half hidden behind a cloth that no one dared question. Until it was too late. Not all masks hide ugliness, some conceal entire curses. These are the words the elders now speak when they begin the story, their voices laced with sorrow and awe. They say that on the night of Nia's wedding, the truth was revealed not by a scream, nor a spell, but by the silence that followed. A silence so deep it seemed to pull the stars closer, as if even the heavens had stopped to witness what was unfolding. This tale is not for the faint-hearted. It is a reminder that when you rush toward something that seems too perfect, you must look again. And again. Because sometimes, perfection is only a disguise worn by something ancient and hungry. And sometimes, love itself must pass through fire before it can shine. Nestled between rolling green hills and the whispering woods stood the village of Aamba, a place untouched by the chaos of distant kingdoms. Time in Aamba moved with the rhythm of nature, slow, deliberate, and sacred. The mornings carried the sweet scent of roasted millet and wet earth. Birds chirped songs that mimicked old chants, and the laughter of children echoed through the dusty paths like blessings. Life here wasn't just lived, it was honored. Every birth was a celebration, every death a ceremonial passage to the ancestral realm, and every decision, especially one as significant as marriage, was guided by tradition, spiritual signs, and the wisdom of elders. The people of Aamba were proud of their customs. Courtship was never a hurried affair. Young men seeking a bride would present themselves not just to the girl, but to her family and by extension, the spirits that watched over them. Elders would read omens in spilled water, in the behavior of goats, or the way smoke rose from the hearth. If the signs were not favorable, no matter how charming the suitor, the union would be discouraged. To go against the advice of the ancestors was seen as courting disaster. After all, the dead did not truly die in Aamba. They lived in the roots of the baobab, in the winds that swept over the river, in dreams that visited the sleeping. The women of Aamba were raised with grace and strength, taught to sing the rain down and braid meaning into their hair. But even among these remarkable women, Nia stood out. She was the daughter of the late village potter and the midwife who knew the name of every herb and the use of every leaf. Nia had inherited her mother's soft voice and her father's steady hands, but it was her mind that made her unforgettable. Curious, bright, and just a little rebellious, Nia often found herself questioning the very traditions she had been taught to honor. While most girls her age practiced walking gracefully with calabashes on their heads, Nia wandered into the forest alone, speaking to trees as if they were old friends. She sat by the river for hours, writing secret stories in the dirt with a stick, stories no one ever read. The elders called her the spirit child, a term both endearing and cautionary. Her curiosity was admired, but it danced too close to the borders of what was considered safe, especially when it came to matters of the heart. Most young women in Aamba had their suitors chosen or at least approved by their families, but Nia had always insisted she would know her husband when she saw him, as if her spirit would recognize his. This, of course, worried her aunt, who had raised her after her parents passed. "Love is not a dream," she'd often say. "It is a seed you plant and water, not a fire you chase through the forest." But Nia believed in that fire. And when the stranger came to Aamba, tall, soft-spoken, with a permanent cloth wrapped around the lower part of his face, she felt something. It wasn't love, not quite. It was something older, more primal. A pull. And though many whispered their doubts about him, Nia felt no fear. She told herself he was just a man, maybe shy, maybe scarred, and that not all mysteries are meant to be feared. Yet, for all her bravery, Nia was still a Vikamba, still shaped by its sacred soil. She lit incense for her parents every seventh day, sang the rain songs with the others, and bowed her head when the seer passed by. She respected the ways even if she questioned them. And that's what made her so beloved. She was both fire and earth, wind and root. But even the brightest flame, if not watched carefully, can catch on something hidden and burn everything down. The village of Ikamba had seen many seasons, had hosted many weddings under the moonlight, had danced to many drumbeats. But nothing could prepare them, or Nia, for what was to come. For in this village where every shadow had a name and every rustle a spirit, a stranger had entered wearing more than a mask. And the ancestors were already stirring. The peace of Ikamba was about to be tested. Not by war. Not by famine. But by the unraveling of a secret so old, it had nearly been forgotten. Nearly. The sun had barely risen the morning Baraka walked into Ikamba. He came with no entourage, no donkey or horse, just a cloth sack over his shoulder and a calm presence that seemed to hush even the morning birds. He introduced himself to the village headman as a humble farmer from a neighboring region, one devastated by drought. He said he had heard of Ikamba's fertile lands and strong traditions, and he hoped to make a new life among its people. He did not ask for land or food. He asked for one thing, a wife. To the villagers, Baraka was a curiosity. He was tall and broad-shouldered, yet soft-spoken. His eyes, the only visible part of his face, were deep and thoughtful. But it was the cloth he wore, wrapped tightly from the bridge of his nose down to his neck, that stirred whispers. Some assumed he had been disfigured in a fire. Others said he wore the cloth in mourning. He claimed it was a custom from his homeland, a mark of humility and respect until he wed. The elders, though cautious, found no reason to reject him. He was polite, brought small offerings of dried fish and nuts, and joined the morning prayers. He even helped an old woman repair her goat pen without being asked. Still there were signs. The night after his arrival, the village dogs howled non-stop. The sacred drum cracked without warning. The flame on the ancestral shrine flickered blue during a ritual. The seer, a woman with milk-white eyes who rarely spoke, muttered that something hidden walks with 2 feet. But as with all things strange, the village folded the unease into their routines. Curiosity faded, replaced by chores and harvest. Nia, however, could not look away. She first saw Baraka by the well. He stood alone, pouring water with deliberate slowness, as if each drop held a memory. When she passed by, he looked up. His eyes locked onto hers, and something ancient stirred in her chest. She had seen those eyes before, in a dream maybe, or a vision from childhood. Whatever it was, it rooted itself deep. Baraka approached her that same day, not with boldness but with reverence. He spoke of how he'd noticed her spirit, how her presence calmed the animals and stirred the leaves. He said he wasn't rich or special, but he believed in fate, and something told him she was the reason he had come to Ikamba. Nia laughed at his awkwardness, yet she found herself drawn to it. In a village full of familiar faces and predictable lives, Baraka was a puzzle. And Nia, ever the seeker, wanted to solve it. Her aunt warned her, gently at first. There is no man without a past, and this one keeps his past too quiet. The old women of the village nodded and clicked their tongues. A man who hides his face hides his truth, one said. But Nia, headstrong as ever, dismissed their concerns. She believed in spirit, in energy, in the pull of fate. She had sat beside the river long enough to know when something called to her. And Baraka, strange as he was, didn't feel dangerous. He felt incomplete, like a drum waiting for the right rhythm. Baraka wasted no time. Within a few weeks, he asked the elders for permission to court Nia properly. He brought small gifts, rare herbs, finely woven mats, beads unlike any seen in the village. Where he got them no one knew. When asked, he simply said they were from his mother's old trade routes. The elders, impressed by his respect and his offerings, gave their blessing. The wedding was planned for the next full moon. Still, the village seemed to breathe a little heavier in those days. Birds flew in odd patterns. A thick fog rolled in each evening, refusing to lift until midday. The children had nightmares. The seer stopped speaking entirely. Yet no one could point to a reason strong enough to cancel a union that had already received ancestral approval in the rituals. And Nia? Nia felt a flutter in her chest, part excitement, part fear, part something she couldn't name. Something cold and heavy that whispered to her when she was alone. But she silenced it. She told herself that all marriages came with uncertainty. That love, real love, meant stepping into the unknown. So on the night before the ceremony, as the village women anointed her with sacred oils and braided symbols into her hair, she smiled and whispered to her reflection in the water, "I see the man, not the mask." Little did she know the mask was the man. And the truth it hid would not only unravel her life, it would awaken something the village had long tried to forget. The day of the wedding dawned with a silence that hung thick over Aamba like a veil. The usual morning sounds, the clucking of hens, the rhythmic pounding of cassava, the laughter of children, were absent. Even the wind, which typically rustled through the banana leaves, seemed to have stilled. The sun rose slowly, shrouded in a pale mist that hadn't touched the village in generations. Yet, despite the strange air, the village stirred. A wedding was a sacred occasion, a celebration not just of love, but of spiritual union. And Nia, beloved by all, was to be wed. The villagers gathered in their finest attire, colors rich as soil and sky, beads clinking gently with each movement. They carried offerings of yams, kola nuts, and palm wine. Drummers sat at the ready. The dancers practiced steps in silence. Baraka stood near the central baobab tree where weddings were held, his face still wrapped in the same cloth, though now embroidered with gold thread. He wore a robe no one had seen before, black with patterns that shimmered like fish scales when they caught the light. He bowed respectfully to every elder, spoke little, and watched Nia's hut with an intensity that unsettled some of the women. Nia emerged like a vision. Her hair was braided with shells and dyed thread. Her robe was woven by her late mother's hands years ago, saved for this day. Her eyes shone not with joy, but with a strange mix of defiance and unease. She had barely slept the night before, kept awake by dreams of drowning and a mask that wept blood. But she shook it off. "Dreams are only that," she whispered to herself. "This is my path." The ceremony began. The village shaman blessed the union, pouring libations on the earth, calling the ancestors to bear witness. Yet when he raised his staff to signal the start of the binding ritual, a gust of wind knocked over the offering bowl. The libations spilled into the dust, and the chickens meant for sacrifice broke loose, feathers flying wildly. The drums fell silent. Still the shaman continued. Some elders exchanged glances but said nothing. It was not their place to interfere once the ancestors had been summoned. Then came the old woman, the seer, Nyoka, hobbling forward with her staff adorned with owl feathers. Her eyes, white and unseeing, stared into the space where Baraka stood. She said nothing at first, just raised her hand. The villagers fell silent. Nyoka's voice trembled but was strong, like wind through old trees. "Not all who smile seek love. Not all who kneel carry peace. I see the shadow behind the mask. I smell blood in the cloth. Nia, child of moonlight, step away before the ground swallows your joy." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Baraka remained still. Nia, heart thudding, looked at Nyoka, then at the elders, then at Baraka. And then she laughed. A short, brittle sound. "I respect your gift, grandmother," she said, "but fear speaks through you. I choose love, not fear." Nyoka lowered her hand, bowed her head, and whispered, "Then love must learn." The ceremony finished in haste. The binding cloth was tied. The sacred chants were sung. The drums picked up again, though off rhythm. Birds gathered on the rooftops but did not sing. A hawk circled once and flew away. No one ate much during the feast. That night, Nia and Baraka entered the marriage hut prepared by the elders, a private space filled with herbs, woven mats, and scented oils. The villagers sang from afar as tradition dictated, letting the couple find peace in seclusion. But as the last song faded into the night, a cold wind swept through Aamba. Inside the hut, Nia lit the ceremonial lamp. She turned to Baraka, heart racing with nervous excitement. "At last, no more masks," she said, smiling as she reached for the cloth that still covered his face. He didn't stop her. But when she removed the mask, she did not find a man. What looked back at her was something older than time, neither fully man nor beast. His eyes remained the same, deep, sorrowful, even kind, but the skin beneath was gray, scaled in places, with markings that pulsed like living runes. His smile was wide and unnatural. His voice, when he spoke, echoed not from his mouth but from somewhere deeper. "I am not what you hoped for, Nia," he said gently. "But I am what you chose." Outside, the night fell into a deep silence. Even the crickets dared not sing. The trees bent as if in mourning. And in the far distance, Nyoka's staff struck the ground once, then again. The air turned heavy. Cold. And the village slept, unaware that a love story had turned into a reckoning. The wind whispered outside their hut, hushing the world as if the night itself held its breath. A soft flame flickered in the small oil lamp that Nia had lit, casting golden shadows on the mud walls. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for Baraka's face. This was the moment of unveiling, a sacred tradition between husband and wife. A gesture of trust, of truth. Baraka did not flinch. He simply knelt before her, his body still as stone, his eyes unreadable beneath the final strip of cloth that masked the truth. With a quiet breath, Nia peeled it away. Her gasp echoed like a scream swallowed too quickly. She stumbled backward, knocking over the lamp. Darkness swallowed them, but the image had already burned itself into her mind. Baraka's face was not that of a man. His skin shimmered faintly like obsidian, marked with glowing etchings that pulsed in a rhythmic pattern. His eyes, though familiar, now gleamed with a light that was not natural, ancient, endless, sorrowful. There were no lips, only a shifting seam that opened when he spoke, revealing no teeth, only shadow and depth. His hair, long and matted during the day, was now a living veil of smoke that twisted and moved on its own. Nia could not scream. Her breath caught in her throat. Her legs refused to obey. Baraka did not move toward her. He simply sat and folded his hands, bowing his head as if ashamed. "I am not what I seemed," he said, his voice no longer just sound but sensation, like the wind moving through hollow bones. "But I am not your enemy." Nia's voice, when it finally emerged, cracked like dry earth. "What are you?" He looked up slowly. "I was once like you. A man. A farmer. A son. I loved. I lived. But long ago I betrayed the sacred oath of the forest. I stole from the ancients, and they cursed me." His tale unfolded in the quiet gloom of the hut. He had entered the forbidden grove, drawn by greed and pride. There he took from a spirit tree, cutting its heartwood, a sacred source of power guarded for generations. The moment his axe struck, the world changed. The ancestors sealed his soul in a shadow body, neither dead nor alive. He wandered for centuries through villages and forests, always seeking a way to undo the wrong. "Every 100 years," he said, "I may take form among the living. Only for a short time. If in that time someone chooses me in love, willingly and without knowing, then I am given one chance." Nia stared at him, a storm of questions brewing behind her fear. A chance to what? To live again. To break the curse. To become mortal once more. Tears welled in her eyes, though she didn't understand why. "And what does that have to do with me?" "You chose me, Nia," he said softly. "You saw me, not my face but my soul. You heard my voice and followed it. That choice bound us." Nia shook her head, backing into the wall. "No, I didn't know. You tricked me." "I never lied," he said, pained. "I came as I was allowed. Hidden but honest in word. I told you I was seeking peace, a home. I did not promise what I could not give. But I didn't know I was marrying this." Her voice cracked as she pointed, eyes wild. He looked down again. "If you wish to leave, you may. I will not stop you. But the bond, it cannot be undone. You are tied to me now. Spiritually. In dreams. In silence. When you speak, I will hear. When I grieve, you will feel it." Nia fell to her knees, her thoughts racing. She wanted to run, to scream for the elders, to undo everything that had happened. But beneath the fear, something stirred, an ache of truth, a flicker of empathy. He had not harmed her. Had not even touched her. "You don't want to hurt me," she whispered. "No," he replied, his voice heavy with sorrow. "I only wanted to be seen. To be chosen without my past defining me." They sat in silence, the weight of fate pressing in on them like the walls of the hut. Outside, the wind moaned like a lost child, brushing sand across the village paths. The animals were still. The night watched and waited. In that moment, Nia knew her life would never be the same. The mask had come off, not just from his face but from the world she thought she knew. What she did next would determine not only her future, but perhaps the fate of Aamba itself. And yet, even as terror gripped her heart, she could not look away. Baraka's tale unfolded like a shadow, stretching back through time, reaching into a past Nia could barely grasp, yet felt connected to somehow. As he spoke, his voice became distant, as though the words were not his own, but whispered through the veil of centuries. The moonlight flickered faintly in the hut, and the air turned cold as though the spirit of the past had entered, weaving its presence around them. "I was not always this creature," Baraka began, his voice low, filled with sorrow. "Once, long ago, I was Prince Kazi, heir to a prosperous kingdom nestled in the heart of the great forest. My people revered me for I was strong, wise, and destined to rule. My father, the king, spoke of the ancestors often, of the sacred pact between our people and the spirits of the land. We were to honor them, to live in harmony with the forest. But I... He paused, his face shifting, his expression darker, as though the very act of reliving this part of his past filled him with shame. I grew restless, he continued. As a young prince, I thought I knew better than the elders. I believed that I could take more, that I could expand the borders of our kingdom, that I could make it more glorious than it had ever been. The forest spirits had their power, but I wanted more. I wanted wealth. I wanted the glory of an empire. So, I ventured into the sacred grove, where no mortal was meant to go, and took what did not belong to me. Baraka's hand, once human and now only a shadow of what it had been, gestured to the air. The cursed markings on his skin glowed faintly, like embers in a dying fire. The forest heartwood, the very source of its power and balance, I took it. I cut down the ancient tree, the one that the ancestors swore to protect. I thought that with it I could claim dominion over life itself. I thought that I could control the spirits. He looked away then, his voice trembling. But the spirits are not to be controlled. They are the breath of the earth, the wind in the trees. And they do not forget. Nia listened, her heart heavy. She could feel the weight of his confession, and yet, there was something else, something that tugged at her own spirit, as if she had always known the consequences of such an act, even if she had never heard the story before. The ancestors cursed me that night, Baraka continued. They stripped me of my humanity, bound me to wander in darkness. The mask I wear, this form, is not of my choosing. It is their judgment, their punishment. I became a cursed thing, neither man nor beast. A shadow that could never again find peace. Nia's stomach turned as she began to understand the gravity of his words. She had seen the mask, had felt its strangeness and the isolation it carried, but now the depth of that isolation was becoming clear. The curse was not merely a punishment for a crime, it was a sentence to loneliness, to wandering in the shadow of who he once was, forever disconnected from the world he had known. I was doomed to walk the earth until someone, somewhere, saw past the mask, Baraka continued, his eyes hollow, as though he were reliving the torment. Until someone, truly pure of heart, saw me as I am, not as the monster the world believed me to be. Only then would I have a chance to be freed from this torment, to reclaim my place among the living. He paused, and for the first time, Nia saw the raw desperation in his eyes. The weight of his curse had driven him to madness. But there was something else there, something softer, a hint of hope. And so, the curse continues binding me to this shape, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Until now. Until you. Nia's heart pounded in her chest. Her mind raced. How had this happened? Why her? Why had the spirits allowed him to come to her? She had never asked for this, never dreamed that the man she had thought was a humble farmer was in fact a prince, cursed and bound by his past mistakes. You're telling me that I'm the key? She asked, her voice trembling with disbelief. That I could free you? Or condemn you forever? Baraka's gaze did not waver. Yes, you are the key. But there is a price, one that you will not be able to escape once you choose. If you help me, you must give up a part of yourself too. The curse cannot be broken without sacrifice. And I do not wish for you to bear this burden. Nia swallowed hard, the weight of his words sinking in. If she helped him, she would forever be bound to him. Her soul, intertwined with his, would be marked by the same curse that haunted him. She would be tied to the shadows that clung to him, the whispers that followed him. But if she refused, he would remain trapped in his monstrous form, condemned to wander forever. What will happen if I choose not to help you? Nia asked softly, though she knew the answer. She could feel it deep within her chest. Baraka's eyes softened. Then I will remain this way, forever. Doomed to haunt the world in this cursed form. And you will forget me. The bond will break and I will be nothing but a memory, a shadow. Nia's heart ached. She could not turn away from him. Not now. Not when she saw the man behind the mask, the man who had suffered for so long. She felt his sorrow as if it were her own. And somehow, deep inside, she knew that the ancestors had brought them together for a reason. Whether to release him from his curse or to share in it, she could not say. But she was tied to this fate now. Nia fled into the night, her heart racing with the weight of Baraka's confession still heavy in her chest. The air outside the hut was thick and suffocating, the moon hidden behind a blanket of clouds, casting the village in an eerie half-light. Her feet barely touched the ground as she ran, the forest looming before her like a darkened sea, ready to swallow her whole. The wind howled and the trees bent and creaked, as though the very earth beneath her was alive with whispers. Nia didn't know where she was going, only that she had to get away. The images of Baraka's cursed form, his words echoing in her mind, pressed in on her with each step. She felt as if she were being pulled in two directions, her heart torn between compassion and fear, between the desire to help him and the dread of becoming entangled in his curse. As she ran, the darkness seemed to shift. The forest closed in around her, the branches reaching out like skeletal hands. And then, just as she thought she might collapse from exhaustion, the world around her shifted. The forest itself seemed to breathe, the air growing thick with a strange energy. Suddenly the wind stopped. The trees fell silent. Nia stumbled to a halt, panting, her breath visible in the cold night air. She looked around, her senses alert. Something was watching her. From the shadows, a figure emerged, cloaked in mist and moonlight. It was not human but something far older, a spirit of the forest. Its form shifted, constantly changing, as though it existed in several places at once, like the very essence of the forest itself. "You are troubled, Nia," the spirit's voice was like the rustling of leaves. It seemed to come from all around her at once. "The man you have married is not who he seems. His curse is not of your making, but your choice may decide his fate." Nia's pulse quickened as she took a step back. The spirit's eyes gleamed with ancient wisdom, and its voice seemed to echo in her mind. She had heard stories of the forest spirits, but never had she imagined that she would meet one face to face. Yet here she was, standing before a being as old as the land itself. "What do you want from me?" Nia asked, her voice trembling. She could feel the weight of the decision she was about to make pressing down on her. Her mind spun with the choices, each one darker than the last. "The time has come to decide," the spirit said, its form flickering like a flame in the wind. "Baraka's curse can be broken. But there is a price to pay. He has lived in darkness for centuries, trapped by his own actions. To free him you must cleanse the curse. But to do so, you must take on part of the burden, for no magic is without cost." The forest seemed to close in around her as the spirit's words sank in. Nia could feel the weight of them pressing against her chest, suffocating her. The decision before her was impossible. To help Baraka meant embracing a life tied to his curse, sharing in the darkness that had haunted him for so long. To leave him meant condemning him to his eternal torment, leaving him to rot in the shadow of his past sins. "You are not bound by his fate, Nia," the spirit continued, its voice softer now, almost sympathetic. "You have the power to choose. But remember, even the purest of hearts cannot escape the consequences of the path they choose." Nia closed her eyes, the world spinning around her. The weight of the choice pressed on her, almost unbearable. She thought of Baraka, the man she had married, the man who had trusted her with his story, his curse. She thought of the loneliness he had endured, of the pain in his eyes when he had revealed the truth. Could she turn away from him now? Could she leave him to suffer alone for eternity? But there was fear too, fear of the curse, of the unknown, of the price that might be required of her. She had no idea what the spirits would ask in return, what kind of sacrifice would be demanded to break the chains that bound Baraka. "Choose wisely, Nia," the spirit said, its voice growing fainter. "Once the choice is made, it cannot be undone. Will you cleanse his soul, or will you let him suffer for eternity?" With those final words, the forest fell silent again. The spirit was gone, leaving Nia standing alone in the dark. She was left with nothing but the whispers of the wind and the overwhelming weight of the decision she had to make. Her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, each one a stark contrast to the other. She couldn't forget the kindness she had seen in Baraka, the warmth in his eyes when he had first approached her, the man behind the mask. But she also couldn't ignore the fear of being bound to a curse for the rest of her life, of losing herself in the process of helping him. What if the curse consumed her, just as it had consumed him? The wind picked up again, howling through the trees, carrying with it the scent of the earth, the weight of ancient power. Nia knew she had to decide, and soon. There was no going back from this moment. Her future, her very soul, hung in the balance. With a deep breath, Nia closed her eyes and made her choice. "Baraka," she whispered into the night, "I will help you." But as the words left her lips, she wasn't sure whether she had chosen out of love, compassion, or fear. All she knew was that her fate was now tied to his, and the path ahead was uncertain. The forest responded with a gust of wind, and the ground beneath her feet seemed to shift. It was done. The decision had been made. Nia turned back toward the village, ready to face whatever lay ahead, knowing that the journey she had begun would change everything, forever. Nia stood in the center of the village, the weight of her decision hanging over her like a dark cloud. The spirit's words echoed in her mind, and though she had chosen to help Baraka, she couldn't escape the fear that gripped her heart. The path ahead was unclear, and the price she might have to pay seemed endless. But the moment she had agreed to attempt breaking the curse, there was no turning back. The first step was to seek the guidance of the village seer, the wise elder who held knowledge passed down through generations. Nia had heard whispers of the seer's powers, her ability to communicate with spirits, to navigate the balance between the living and the dead. The seer was the only one who could help her perform the ritual necessary to break the curse on Baraka. Nia made her way to the seer's hut at the edge of the village. The air was thick with the scent of herbs, the walls lined with dried roots, bones and talismans that had been used in countless rituals over the years. The seer, an old woman named Marembi, sat in the corner of the room, her eyes closed as if communing with the unseen world. Her face was lined with years of wisdom, but there was a sharpness in her gaze that made Nia's heart race. "Marembi," Nia said softly, stepping into the hut. The old woman opened her eyes and Nia saw the depth of knowledge there, knowledge that was both comforting and terrifying. "You have made your choice," Marembi said in a low voice as though she had been expecting Nia. "The spirits have already sensed your decision. Now we must gather the tools to break the curse." Nia nodded, a mixture of determination and fear pooling in her chest. "What do we need?" The seer reached for a worn ancient book bound in animal hide, its pages yellowed with age. She flipped through the pages slowly, stopping at a particular section filled with diagrams and symbols that Nia couldn't decipher. "To break the curse, we must perform the ritual of spirit fire," Marembi said. "It requires rare and powerful items, tools that will draw out the spirit of Baraka's former self, the prince who betrayed his ancestors. Only then will we have the power to cleanse him." The ritual was not simple. First, they would need the feather of a sacred bird that lived deep within the jungle, an impossible task for most, but one that Marembi had the means to obtain. Next, they required the ashes of a fire that had burned for 7 days without ceasing. Finally, they needed a bowl made from the wood of an ancient tree that stood on the highest peak in the village, a tree said to have been planted by the gods themselves. The items were as rare as they were dangerous to acquire, and Nia knew that this ritual would not only test her resolve but also her very soul. Marembi handed Nia a list of the items they would need, and Nia set out with a sense of purpose, though she could feel the weight of the task upon her. The sacred bird's feather would be the first item to find. It lived in the heart of the jungle, a place so treacherous that even seasoned hunters avoided it. Nia, however, knew that there was no turning back. With Marembi's guidance, she ventured deep into the jungle, guided by the sound of rustling leaves and the occasional distant call of the bird she sought. The jungle was alive with the sounds of life, but it was also filled with danger. The plants were thick and lush and venomous creatures lurked in the shadows. Nia moved carefully, aware that every step could be her last, but she pressed on, her resolve unwavering. After what felt like an eternity, she finally found the sacred bird, a majestic creature with feathers of gold and silver, perched high in the tallest tree. The bird regarded her with ancient eyes, as if it could sense the purpose behind her presence. Nia offered a prayer to the spirits and with the utmost care, collected the feather. The journey continued. Nia retrieved the ashes of the 7-day fire from a village elder, whose flames had burned continuously to honor the gods, and she climbed the peak to gather the wood from the ancient tree. Each task was a trial, but with each step, Nia grew stronger, more certain that this was the path she was meant to follow. When all the items were gathered, Nia returned to the village where Marembi was waiting for her. Together, they prepared the sacred space in the heart of the forest, a clearing where the spirits could be called forth. The air was thick with tension as the ritual site was arranged, the ashes carefully spread, the bowl placed at the center, and the feather laid out with the utmost reverence. Nia and Marembi chanted ancient incantations as the sun set, its last rays casting an ethereal glow across the forest. The fire in the center of the clearing blazed brightly, its flames licking the air with a heat that seemed to burn away the very fabric of reality. The spirits of the ancestors were called, their voices whispering through the trees. As the ritual reached its peak, the air grew heavy with energy, and Nia felt a coldness wash over her. The ground beneath her feet seemed to tremble, and she could hear the sound of chains rattling in the distance. Then, as if summoned by the fire itself, a shadow appeared before them. Baraka's former self, a dark, twisted version of the man she had married, emerged from the flames. His face was contorted with pain and rage, his body shifting between human and spirit form. His eyes locked onto Nia's and she could feel the agony that coursed through him. It was as though he were being torn apart from the inside out. "No!" the figure cried, his voice like 1,000 souls crying out in torment. "I betrayed them. I betrayed myself." The spirit thrashed violently, the curse unraveling with each tortured scream. Nia felt the force of his pain ripple through her own soul, but she held her ground, her heart steady. This was the moment she had been waiting for. The power of the ritual was drawing the curse from Baraka, but it was not without consequence. Baraka's spirit screamed, and the flames around them surged with violent intensity. Nia's heart raced as she knew the spirit would not give up easily. But she stood firm, her voice joining the chant with Marembe's, calling upon the ancestors to finally release Baraka from his torment. The ritual was far from over, but Nia knew that the moment of reckoning had arrived. The final battle for Baraka's soul had begun. Baraka's form flickered violently in the flames, shifting between the cursed creature he had become and the man he once was. His eyes, dark with agony and guilt, locked onto Nia's with an intensity that seemed to burn through her very soul. The air around them was charged, thick with the energy of the ritual, and Nia could feel her heart pounding in her chest. The spirit of Baraka wailed in pain, his body convulsing as he struggled to free himself from the curse that had bound him for so long. His skin rippled and twisted, his face contorting with the torment of betrayal and regret. "Please," he pleaded, his voice ragged, "forgive me. I was a fool, blinded by greed and ambition. I never meant to hurt anyone, least of all you, Nia." Nia stood frozen, her body trembling under the weight of his words. She could feel the fear and the sorrow that radiated from him, a raw and vulnerable plea for mercy. She wanted to run, wanted to flee from the creature he had become, but deep within her she knew this moment was far more than a test of courage. It was a moment of truth, a defining point where compassion and fear collided. The spirits of the ancestors were watching, their presence heavy in the air, and Nia could sense that the outcome of this ritual hinged on her next move. The flames around them flickered and danced as if awaiting her response. Baraka's form continued to shift, becoming more grotesque with each passing second. His features twisted, his eyes glowed with an eerie light, and his body trembled as though it could no longer contain the torment he had been carrying for centuries. The curse had taken its toll on him, and his once human form was no longer recognizable. "Please, Nia," he cried again, his voice cracking, "help me. I'm not the man I was. I've been cursed for my sins. But I know I can change. I can be free of this darkness. If only you can see the truth within me, if you can offer me your forgiveness." Nia's heart ached at the sight of him. There was something hauntingly human in his plea, something that spoke to the core of her own fears and desires. She had never wanted revenge, she had never wanted to see him suffer. But the pain he had caused, the fear and anguish he had brought upon her, how could she forgive that? The spirits whispered around her, their voices soft but insistent. The power of redemption lies in the heart. Only through empathy, through understanding, can the curse be broken. To forgive is not to forget, but to heal. Nia felt the weight of their words. She realized that this moment was not just about Baraka's redemption, it was about her own. The curse that had bound him had also tied her to him, in ways she had not understood until now. The pain, the fear, the distrust, those were chains she too had carried. To forgive him, to release the curse, was to release herself from the torment of the past. Her gaze softened, and for the first time she saw Baraka not as the cursed spirit before her, but as a man lost in his own suffering. He had made choices, terrible choices, but he was not beyond redemption. And neither was she. Nia stepped forward, her hand trembling as she reached for him. The flames around them burned brighter, and for a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Baraka's eyes locked onto hers, his expression a mix of hope and fear. He was waiting for her to choose. Nia closed her eyes for a moment, and in that quiet instant she felt a deep shift within her. She thought of all the pain she had endured, all the fear and confusion that had clouded her heart. But she also thought of the love that had once been shared between them, the kindness, the respect. It was that love, hidden beneath the layers of betrayal and pain, that she reached for now. Without a word, Nia wiped the tears from her eyes and let a single tear fall into the air before her. It glistened in the firelight, a small drop of pure, unspoken empathy. She offered it to him, to the spirits, and to herself. The tear fell to the ground and the world seemed to pause. The flames flickered and a soft wind blew through the clearing, carrying with it a sense of calm. Baraka's form, which had been twisted and distorted, began to settle. His monstrous features softened, and the darkness that had plagued him began to recede. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice filled with a quiet reverence. His body, once a twisted amalgamation of curse and despair, began to return to its human form. His skin smoothed, his features softened, and for the first time, Nia saw him as he had been, a young man filled with sorrow but not beyond saving. The spirits of the ancestors, their voices now calm and steady, spoke once more. "The curse is lifted. The burden of the past has been released. You have both chosen the path of redemption." The fire in the clearing began to die down, its heat softening into a warm glow. The spirits, their work done, faded back into the ether, leaving behind a profound silence. The ritual was complete. Nia stood before Baraka, her heart pounding with both relief and exhaustion. He was no longer the creature he had been. His soul had been freed, but so had hers. The curse had been broken, not by power, but by the simple, profound act of compassion. Baraka bowed his head in gratitude, his eyes filled with a deep, sincere thankfulness. "I am no longer the man I was," he said softly. "You have saved me, Nia. And I will spend the rest of my life showing you that your choice was not in vain." As the first light of dawn broke through the trees, Nia felt a sense of peace settle over her. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time she felt free, free from fear, free from the curse, and free to live her life with the wisdom that true redemption lies in the power of empathy and forgiveness. And so, the story of Nia and Baraka became a legend, passed down through the generations, a reminder of the strength it takes to choose redemption and the transformative power of a single tear. As the first rays of dawn began to break through the trees, a profound silence settled over the clearing. The air, thick with the energy of the ritual, had softened. The once bright flames that had danced in the night now flickered low, their heat transforming into a gentle warmth that enveloped the newly freed Baraka and Nia. The curse had been lifted, and with it, the weight that had burdened both their souls was gone. Baraka stood before Nia, his form now fully human, his once cursed features no longer twisted by the monstrous spirit that had plagued him for so long. His face, now revealed, was no longer the mask of a demon but the face of a humble man. His eyes, once clouded with the darkness of guilt and despair, were now clear, filled with gratitude and relief. The mask that had bound him, both physically and spiritually, had shattered, and in its place, there was only the man who had been trapped beneath it for so long. Nia looked at him, her heart still racing, but her mind clearer than it had ever been. The transformation was not just physical. Baraka's soul had been reborn, cleansed of the curse that had bound him to the land for centuries. His past sins, while not forgotten, had been forgiven, not through any divine power, but through the simple yet profound act of empathy, understanding, and compassion. The spirits of the ancestors who had witnessed the entire ritual now spoke their final words. "The curse is lifted. The spirit of the past has been released, and a new dawn has come. May the ones who walk this path now live in peace, far from the shadows that once plagued them." As the last echo of the spirit's words faded into the breeze, Nia and Baraka turned toward the village. The sun had risen fully now, casting its golden light over the trees, the earth, and the life that thrived within it. The clearing, once a place of terror, had become a sacred space, a symbol of redemption and the power of compassion. Baraka and Nia made their way back to the village. Word of the ritual had already spread, carried by the whispers of the wind and the stories of the spirits. The villagers, who had once feared Baraka, who had once seen him as nothing more than a mysterious stranger, now looked upon him with curiosity and respect. They saw him not as the cursed being he had once been, but as a man who had been given a second chance, a man who had faced his past and had chosen redemption. As they entered the village, the people gathered, their eyes wide with wonder and awe. The elders, who had long known the old stories of the spirits and curses, nodded in silent approval. The villagers, too, saw the change in Baraka, the humility in his eyes, the gentleness in his voice. He was no longer a man consumed by power or ambition. Instead, he was a man reborn, free from the chains of his past. Nia, too, was transformed. She had faced unimaginable fear, and yet she had chosen compassion over vengeance. She had shown the villagers what true courage looked like, not in the battle against an enemy, but in the battle against one's own fears and prejudices. Her act of forgiveness had not only saved Baraka but had saved herself from a life of anger and resentment. The villagers began to whisper her name with reverence, calling her a hero, a legend of compassion, courage, and selflessness. Together, Nia and Baraka chose to live simply, far from the trappings of power, wealth, and temptation. The allure of riches and fame, which had once captivated Baraka's heart, now seemed irrelevant. The lesson he had learned, the lesson of humility and self-awareness, was far more valuable than any gold or title. They built a humble home on the edge of the village, away from the bustle of daily life. Baraka, once a prince, now worked alongside the villagers, tending to the land and learning the ways of the people. Nia, ever kind and nurturing, shared her wisdom with the younger generation, teaching them the importance of empathy, understanding and respect for one another. She spoke of the power of choice, of the strength it takes to forgive and to heal, and of the importance of looking beyond the surface to see the true essence of a person. The village too thrived. The lessons of the past, the stories of redemption and forgiveness, were passed down through the generations. Nia's legacy lived on in the hearts of the people, her name becoming synonymous with compassion, while Baraka's transformation became a symbol of the power of second chances. The villagers now knew that redemption was not just a gift from the spirits, but a choice that each person must make for themselves. And so they lived their lives, simple, humble but rich in love, respect and understanding. The past, with all its darkness and pain, was left behind, replaced by a new dawn. A dawn of healing, of peace, and of the knowledge that true strength lies not in the power to conquer, but in the power to forgive and to embrace the humanity in others. The village of Aamba, once overshadowed by fear and mystery, had become a place where the light of redemption shone brightly. And in this new dawn, Nia and Baraka found their peace, no longer haunted by the past but living fully in the present, united by the love that had transformed them both. In every story there is a deeper truth, one that often lies hidden beneath the surface of appearances. The tale of Nia and Baraka is no different, offering a profound lesson about the true nature of identity, the transformative power of compassion, and the way that love can heal wounds that seem too deep to mend. At its heart, this story reminds us that what we see with our eyes is not always the full truth. It teaches us that true identity often lies beneath the surface, and it is only through understanding, empathy, and courage that we can uncover the depths of a person's soul. Baraka's curse and his deception as a humble farmer with a mask were the ultimate symbols of how people can hide their true selves, often out of fear, shame, or an overwhelming desire to protect themselves from the world's judgment. His appearance, his covered face, was a metaphor for the walls he had built around his heart. For years, Baraka had been trapped in a prison of his own making, bound by the curse of his past sins and the fear of revealing who he truly was. He had hidden behind the mask, concealing his true identity from the world and, more painfully, from himself. His curse wasn't just physical, it was a spiritual imprisonment, one that kept him from knowing who he truly was and from seeking redemption. Nia's journey was equally transformative. She entered into the marriage with Baraka out of curiosity and trust, believing in the version of him that he had shown her. When the truth was revealed to her, Nia could have reacted with anger, fear, or rejection. It would have been easy to condemn Baraka for the curse he carried, for the lie he had lived. Yet, in the face of this terrifying revelation, Nia made a choice that many would have found impossible. She chose compassion. She saw beyond Baraka's monstrous appearance, looking not at the mask but at the man beneath it. Her decision to offer him empathy, her willingness to listen to his painful story, and her courage to help him break free from the curse were acts of extraordinary love and understanding. Compassion in this tale emerges as the true antidote to the darkness that had enveloped Baraka. It was Nia's empathy and her willingness to face the unknown that allowed Baraka's curse to be lifted. Her love, pure and unconditional, was the key to his redemption. The story teaches us that sometimes, the greatest act of courage is not in fighting external battles, but in choosing to heal, forgive and transform relationships from the inside out. The curse that had once seemed insurmountable, the monster that had been lurking beneath Baraka's surface, was only vanquished through love, through the deep, transformative power of understanding and compassion. This theme of redemption through compassion also mirrors the concept of ancestral justice that runs throughout the story. The spirits of the ancestors did not act out of vengeance, but rather they sought balance and harmony. The curse placed upon Baraka was not just a punishment for his betrayal, but a test of his heart, of his capacity to change, and of the love that could transcend his past wrongs. The ancestors were not simply interested in retribution, they wanted to see if Baraka could find his way back to his true self, if he could confront the darkness within him and emerge as a man worthy of redemption. Nia's role in this was crucial. She became the bridge between Baraka's past sins and his future salvation. Through her compassion and the strength of her character, she became the catalyst for the ancestral justice that restored balance to both Baraka and the village. The courage to face the unknown is another powerful theme embedded in the story. Nia's journey into the forest, her choice to undergo the ritual, and her willingness to step into the unknown were all acts of bravery. She could have turned away, abandoned Baraka to his fate, and gone on with her life. But she chose to face the mystery and the danger because she saw something in Baraka that others had failed to see. A man in need of redemption, not a monster deserving of condemnation. Her courage to face the unknown, to embrace the challenge of breaking the curse, was the final key to unlocking Baraka's freedom. In the end, Nia's decision was not just about saving Baraka. It was also about saving herself, learning that sometimes facing our greatest fears can lead to our most profound growth. The final line of the tale: she thought she married a farmer, but she became the wife of a story still told in whispers, speaks to the lasting impact of Nia's choices. It captures the essence of how the story of her compassion, courage, and love transcended time and place. It became more than just a personal tale, it became a legend, a lesson passed down through generations. In a village where stories are shared around fires and whispered in the night, Nia's name would be remembered not as the wife of a farmer, but as the woman who saw the soul beneath the mask, who chose love and healing over fear and vengeance, and who became a symbol of the enduring power of compassion. In the end, this tale offers a timeless reminder. Appearances can deceive, and the true nature of a person is often hidden beneath layers of pain, fear, and past mistakes. Only through compassion, empathy, and the courage to look beyond the surface can we uncover the truth and heal even the deepest of wounds. Nia's story teaches us that no matter how great the darkness, love has the power to bring light. And, in a world where so much is hidden, it is only through understanding that we can find the strength to transform not just others but ourselves.